AgriTalk, where we want to promote meaningful discourse on agriculture and food security in the country. We'll be having these conversations every weekday. So let's now bring in a conversation about rice. So there's a story that was in the Standard a couple of days ago, and it was also covered in another story, about the plight of rice farmers in Ahero. Ahero is in Kisumu County, is a neighboring constituency from yours, Kisumu East, right? So these rice farmers, they are sitting there with stock of grain. They're unable to take it to the stores run by the Kenya National Trading Corporation. They are also unable to sell the rice because they have gotten word that the stores are full. And stores being full, you know what the stores being full in Kenya means? That there's no one who's going to buy. So now brokers are coming to the farms. They're the ones who are trying to buy this rice. If they were able to sell for 45 shillings a kilo of rice paddy, now brokers are coming and offering 30, 25 bob, 30 bob. So that's already a drop in how much they could have sold. And yet at the same time, as you look at all this overproduction of rice in that just one region, other regions of the country also that grow rice, at the same time we hear stories of importation of rice. Do we have a rice deficit in the country? Do we have a net rice deficit in the country? Are we able to meet our need? What is it that we need to do to increase our capacity on that? So some of the people who've been working on this include the Tegemea Institute. It's a research department within Egerton University. And Dr. Timothy Njagi joins us now. He is a development economist and research fellow at the Tegemea Institute of Agriculture Policy and Development of Egerton University. He's on the line. Dr. Njagi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Thank you for inviting us to the show.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Yeah, thank you. And we are happy to engage in this discussion about rice.
I think let's just start off. Before we come into the plight of the farmers in Ahero and others, let's just ask ourselves, do we have a rice glut or a rice deficit in the country?
Well, Eric, we do have a big deficit in the country. We consume about 800,000 metric tons of rice per year, and we only manage to produce about just upwards of 100,000 tons. So in terms of percentages, we actually import about 90% of the rice that we consume in the country.
That's very high. So when then we see farmers growing the rice, and this rice is not taken up in the market immediately, why is the gap? What's the problem?
The key challenge has been the cost of production, and of course coupled with some few bad policies. We have two rice. Okay, for rice, let's characterize rice production. So majority of the rice that is grown in Kenya is grown under large-scale irrigation schemes. We have two key clusters. We have the central cluster, where mainly it's Mwea irrigation scheme, and then we have the western cluster, where we have a number of irrigation schemes, including Ahero. Mwea accounts for about 80% of the rice that we produce, and then the 20% is distributed across the other schemes. The key challenge has been the cost of production. In Ahero, the cost of production is about 30 shillings per kg of paddy. If you remember, last year we had a presidential directive that KNTC was to purchase rice from all rice farmers, including the central and the western clusters, and they paid a premium price. So that means that they paid a price that was above the market price. So given our high cost of production, this is a good relief for farmers, because it means like last year farmers were able to get a good profit. However, the plan was that government agencies were to buy now rice from KNTC. Previously, government agencies would buy rice from traders, and some of the ones that consume a lot of rice would be involved in importation. So the CS directed that all rice should be bought from KNTC by the government agencies. So when we hear that the KNTC stores are full, then it can only mean that the government agencies will not take off that rice. And I think KNTC needs to sell that rice to government agencies for them to continue buying rice from farmers.
Why?
The key
Can I ask you,
yeah.
why? What would be the reason why the rice would not be picked up? Because you're saying
So
that
remember,
you hit a problem there now where it's not picked up from the farmers. What would be the reason
so
why that
remember,
doesn't happen?
of course, the key problem is the price. So remember that last year, for example, if before the government intervened, the prices were very low, both in Hero, in Mwea. We found that after the government intervention, the price was raised by about 20 to 30 shillings per kilo. So remember that this 20 shillings to 30 shillings per kilo is not reflective of market prices. This is just a premium that the government is paying. So if you're a customer, for example, a customer like you and I would never buy rice from KNTC because you are paying way above what the market is offering. And the premium that you're paying is not reflective of anything. It's not because the quality is better or anything. It's just because this was a policy that was set to give relief to farmers. So we find that even without that relief, one of the key challenges that rice farmers face has been the cheap rice that comes mainly from Asia. Asia, they have advanced in terms of rice production and they do a lot of volumes. So you find that they're able to produce and bring the rice here at much lower prices. So one of the best ways to help rice farmers is to improve the competitive edge or the competitiveness of rice farmers.
Is this being done, Dr.?
So, but it has bits and bits is being done. I think
tell us about the bits and pieces that are being done. What exactly is the government doing to make our farmers competitive?
So, one of the things is that we need to improve rice productivity. Given that most of the rice productivity, most of our rice is grown in irrigation, some of the key things that the government has tried to do, of course, we hope that it would have been done in a much faster pace, was, for example, to increase the area under irrigation. We know that we have a huge project in Mwea that is supposed to help store water and improve irrigation efficiency. One of the key challenges that we have faced all along is that even under irrigation, we are still subject to the vagaries of weather, in the sense that you get water not being enough when you need it.
Dr. I want to halt your thinking for a moment. If the government was really, you are not a government spokesman, but I just want to bring this to the fore. Because you talk about rice coming from Asia. Japan also has a problem similar to ours. They also have rice farmers. And the production, the cost of producing the rice is very expensive. But the government protects the right, their rice farmers by putting in the sort of regulations that guarantee that the rice is given first consideration. Do we have such policies in the country? Do we protect our farmers? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So one of the best ways to protect our farmers is not, that's why I mentioned the issue about bad policy. So rather than buy at a premium price beyond what the market is offering, because that then what you may end up doing is you become the preferred market for the farmers, would be to lower their cost of production, right?
Yep.
So that if today that they're facing a price of 35, how can we help farmers to produce at 20 shillings? So then they have a margin of 10 shillings. And then for us to effectively do that, then we need to look at what are the key cost components for rice. Most of our rice is produced, is not mechanized. And you see, rice is one of those commodities that can be 100% mechanized. The cost of importing mechanized equipment is high. We've had instances in some years where there's related importing of agricultural mechanized inputs. But the problem is that they did not remove the waiver on the spare parts. So it's like somebody tells you, yes, you can buy a new tractor, but if you need spare parts, which you need to import, you have to pay the duty and the VAT.
Yeah.
So that discourages adoption of mechanization. So you tend now to continue using labor. Labor is becoming increasingly more expensive, partly fueled by the high cost of living, and also because of rural to urban migration. It means that you have less people now engaged in agriculture in the rural areas. And that, of course, means that you have to pay them more if you want them to come and provide service for you. So, in a way, the things that we are doing to try and lower the cost of production are not effective. So we need to understand, for example, if we give farmers today, because I know farmers in Kisumu, up to until a few years back, they were benefiting from like the NIAP program, which was giving seeds and fertilizer to farmers, but then that accounts for less than 10% of the cost of production. So you don't really affect that cost of production, because if labor is going to account for 80%, then we need to be thinking, how can we then help farmers the technologies, because then now we can have meaningful impact in terms of reducing.
So essentially we are saying that what the government initiatives are next to nothing. The farmer isn't protected. There aren't policies that guarantee that rice production can be made competitive. So in essence, government policies, instead of protecting the farmer, is actually killing the rice industry.
Yeah, I wouldn't
okay to say
characterize like that. I would actually say that the government policies are not effective. They're not effective, and the reason they're not effective is also because that they're not driven by evidence. So you need to because if, for me, the clearest example I can give, if you go and subsidize a fertilizer, and yet fertilizer is accounting for a very small percentage in terms of the cost of production, you're actually not helping that farmer. Then when it comes to trade, we've also not really protected our farmers in terms of getting some relief in the way we negotiate for trade agreements. So I can give you an example. Most of our rice comes from Pakistan, right? A few years back, I think this was under Kibaki's government. They did try to, raise the tariff, but then Pakistan retaliated by raising the tariff 40. And then we had to go back to the negotiating table. The key challenge we have right now is that most of that rice, especially the Pakistan rice, is usually adulterated. And the reason why I use the word adulterated, blending is okay, because blending means that you are able to tell the customer that I imported rice from Pakistan, I've given you 20% rice from Pakistan, 20% rice from Mahero, or 20% rice from Mwea, so that the customer actually knows what is in the content of that package. Adulteration is where now you come and you will sell off the Pakistan rice as either Mwea rice or Mahero rice or something like that. So that means that you are denying the customer the value for what they're paying, and we don't have policies that kind of try to counteract that. So this is some behavior that continues to run in the market, and of course the people who tend to benefit would be people up in the value chain, not necessarily producers. But we do acknowledge that most of the rice that we produce in Kenya is good quality, is much better quality than the rice that we import from Asia. The key challenge is that consumers prefer the imported rice because of the cost. It's much cheaper than our rice.
So how can we have this conversation about, let's just assume that everything is taken care of, right? Cost of production is reduced so that it gives farmers an advantage. We're looking at cost of inputs for agricultural materials such as fertilizers, the creation of dams for storage of water and things like that, created and done in a way that the farmers are able to afford it. Let's also look at, protectionism then for farmers so that the product can be protected. Kenyans buy that first because of and the government also buffering so that it helps with the cost and how much then we're able to purchase. Let's say that all of that is done and then we have a market that is suitable. The cartels play a very major role in this in terms of making sure that the farmers are at a disadvantage. Is it possible to get rid of that? Because it's a reality for them. They are farming their product, they're harvesting their product, but then there's still those who are at the controls when it comes to how this product is then distributed in the market. Do you see this as a major problem, as I do?
Yeah, definitely. It is actually possible to strengthen farmers' participation in the market and have them, wither down the effect of imported rice. So remember, if you look at the current strategy, it's very ambitious. I think the plan is to grow rice production from just above 100,000 tons to about 800,000 metric tons by 2030. By 2030, I think our projected consumption will be about 1.4 million tons.
So this is the government's plan?
Yes, okay. This is the government plan. Right. This is the National Rice Development Strategy.
Okay. So,
in essence, what we all know, and we've had a lot of support including from Japan through JICA, through the ticket process, where one of the key things, not just in Kenya but in the African region, they were trying to help African countries double rice production, because rice actually is the most fast-growing cereal in terms of consumption. So if today we produce even 500,000 metric tons. All this will be consumed locally. So that means that we are importing less. Then we can start seeing what are these kind of policies that we need to put in place. First of all, to help our farmers become competitive. The first one I think that we need to do is we need to help farmers mechanize. The second thing we need to do, we need to make sure that we have a vibrant research, especially for rice research. As we develop the infrastructure for irrigation, we also need to make sure that it goes hand along with research so that we have the varieties that can, because with irrigation you can do several crops in a year. The biggest letdown for ourselves is that even when we have irrigation, we still have instances where farmers are doing one crop a year because there's not enough water to grow rice. So we need to find a way, can we store that water? Can we make sure that we have several cycles? And then can we make sure that we help farmers now, and this is now the research part comes in, to be able to focus on the pest and disease control. And then now try to help farmers come together in terms of association. We have good examples. Mwea has been cited as one of best practice in Africa, and not just in Africa, actually, it's one of the best practice in the world. If you look at the cooperative in Mwea, it's quite strong and quite vibrant. They have a very strong brand, which they've developed on their own. So this thing that people should not think that farmers cannot do it. Farmers, they themselves, they managed to, and this started from during liberalization, when they fought to come out of NIB, and they managed to organize themselves and manage their cooperative well. And it's still a good example of good management. It's growing. They're increasing in volumes of the rice that they're collecting from their members, and they're even now buying even from non-members. So it actually shows that we can actually compete. And for us, although yes, we know that the preference for the consumer at the end of the day will be to try and pay as little as possible for the commodity. But I think when it comes to importation, as long as we remain competitive and help our farmers remain competitive, even without putting non-tariff barriers, would find that we have a lot of market.
The market would prefer to go the Kenyan way, to consume the local product.
Exactly, because now when you, for example, when you visit Kisumu, you'll come back to Nairobi with rice from Ahero.
Yeah.
But this thing where now you're coming to Kisumu and you buy rice from Pakistan, you should try and move away from it.
We are now discussing agriculture and food security. We call this Agri-Talk. In the studio is Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, Honorable Shakil Shabir, the MP for Kisumu East, and joining us on the line is Timothy Njagi. He is a development economist and research fellow with the Tegemeo Institute at Egerton University. As we have the conversation, and I know, Moshimo, you have a question for Timothy, let's just hear from Francis of Mwea, who also wants to contribute. Francis, good morning.
Morning, Latif. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Francis Baraka.
Yep.
The director Baraka Retminders and Stores.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of the show.
Karibu sana.
So I had you today you're talking about rice, which is part of me since I grew up in Mwea. So the economist has raised the point of that we face a high cost of production for rice. And it's not even more about the input, but also the labor.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the attributes that makes even the labor to go high is because we pay for water to the government to provide us water through the National Irrigation Board. But now you see this water is scarce.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go an extra cost to pay people to sleep at night, looking for water to be put into your farm and all that. So it brings the cost to go high. Every time it goes higher and higher and high.
So there's the cost of labor and purchasing of water. Where do they get the water from, the people that you're paying?
So the water comes from the mountain, but now as the water flows, the National Irrigation Board has built some canals that pass through the irrigation.
Right.
So each and every farmer that owns a farm has to pay a certain fee every year.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, the water is scarce. So you have to go an extra cost to pay people to sleep at night, and to make sure that your farm it gets water.
It's basically to guard your water, to protect your water.
Not even to go look for water and bring it to your farm.
Okay.
You understand? So for me, what I can say, the thing that has made the rice so far to be vibrant is the private contribution that people have done as individuals. And one point is the mechanization that people have been able to bring on board, even through the government. The harvesters that we currently have helped to reduce the wastage during harvesting. So if we look at it, if we can be able to mechanize the entire process, the production will go up, and the cost can go down also.
Okay. Francis, tell us about the storage as well, because I got another comment here. Someone saying it's also the issue of storage. A big challenge, lack of storage, because farmers end up selling at low cost in order just to get rid of their produce.
So you look at the tradition. You look at the past. When we were farming rice in the 90s, the rice used to be stored at the National Irrigation Board. You need to go back with your rice to your home. So when the liberalization happened, now everyone could be able to go back with his rice to homes. We could even put up a rice mill like the one we have for Baraka rice millers and stores. So the challenge that most these farmers have is that you cannot be able to keep this rice at home. Maybe because you don't have a good storage, you know the house and all that. So some end up putting it at our mills, because we offer a lot of mills offer storage. But now most of the farmers end up just selling it to people who now go store for them, like now the brokers.
Okay.
Just to get rid of it, because you're not sure if you keep it at home, it's going to be secure or not.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insights, Francis. All the best in Mwea.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Still having a conversation, Dr. Timothy. You've had the input from Francis, and just before you respond to that, also some input coming in from Mheshimiwa.
Yes, Dr. Francis Timothy. Firstly, I want to commend the quality of experts that we have in the agricultural sector. I've always been amazed at the sort of, we have great experts in the civil service in the agricultural sector, but we don't listen to them. And he's one such case. I want to also talk about the Meat Commission. Our Meat Commission, whatever, was taken to Botswana to make a success in Botswana. And yet we couldn't do it here. So firstly, I want to take my hat off to the experts. There was a time that we had agricultural extension officers.
Yep.
What happened? The issue of storage in Ohero, and I do appreciate you talking about mechanization, but Ohero, we are small-hold farmers. And most of them are in the Namthoi, swampy, wetland areas. The problem that we have is that we are sabotaged and hijacked by cartels and sabotaged by our own government, Ministry of Agriculture, who's meant to be protecting us, sabotaged by our tax laws, sabotaged by our importation policies, sabotaged whether, you see, sugar, rice, maize, wheat, tea, all of these we are actually held at ransom. And there are people like Timothy who are doing a great job where they are and talking about how to take long-term gain, research, etc. The question that the farmer wants to know now, if we in Kisumu we want to know now, is what are we going to do about our rice right now?
Yeah.
Our rice is better quality than the Chinese plastic rice. The Pakistani rice that is coming, the Pakistanis, and that's where my great-grandfather came from. When I go to Pakistan, they tell me about the Peshawari rice that is grown in Mwea, in Kenya.
They know about the Mwea rice.
That's right. This rice is better than some of the rice that is elsewhere. So what's happening is we are, as well as Mwea has branded, my wife goes to the supermarket, she's only buying Mwea rice. The Pakistani rice is now, as he's well said, and I don't know whether the civil servant is scared of his job, they're actually using the Mwea brand and mixing all sorts of rubbish in there and selling it in Mwea rice. So I think that is where now the competition bureau, the standards bureau, the trade and
Bureau
standards.
standards, yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, everything you see, I heard that because we did something on our rice, we put a tax on the Pakistani rice coming in, the Pakistanis then went and reacted on the tea. We shouldn't, I mean, God's sake, 90% of our consumption is from abroad. If that is the case, yeah, why are we allowing this Pakistani rice, this rice from Southeast Asia, this Chinese rice coming in? I stay in Kisumu. Do you know that Chinese fish is cheaper in Kisumu from China than from the lake? Rice is cheaper. So my question to Timothy is this: Timothy, can you as an expert talk about short-term actions that the government needs to take, the Ministry of Finance needs to take, and the long-term actions that professionals like you and Egerton College need to look at as what we call as research? So on the short term, what can you do about Ahero rice, for argument's sake? Can we go the way Mwea is doing? What do we do? How should we be able to do we block the rice importation first until all local rice is taken? Mauritius does that. Actually, Mauritius has done an opposite. Their sugar is in such high quality that they import Kenya sugar to sell in the Mauritius market and take Mauritian sugar and export it. No, export it to Europe.
Other parts of the world.
As a Booker Tate White, those little things. So I think what we need to do here is we need to change our thing. And finally, our agricultural ministry was a great ministry. We have over time from the 70s and the 60s, you know, where there's cooperatives and everything was working well, we have sold ourselves. Down the line, we have gone for short-term gains. We need to improve that particular thing and have silos. Where are the silos in Kisumu? There is no silo for rice in Kisumu, whereas the first silos were invented in Egypt. Do you understand me, sir?
Right up the lake.
Yes.
So, Timothy, respond to that. What is it that the government can do, short, medium, and long term?
What is we politicians can do? What is we MPs can do?
Yes.
That is what we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa, and thank you to Francis too for the question. So, Eric, I think from my perspective, short-term solution number one. So last year, the government made a pronouncement, and I think the pronouncement had some ambiguity in it. When you want to purchase grain from farmers at a higher price, you need to prepare farmers, whether this is a 1-year thing or a 2-year thing or a 3-year thing, so that farmers know that from then they'll go back to the usual market. What we are seeing clearly now is probably a miscommunication to farmers, because they kind of made it like they'll be buying, the government through KNTC will be buying grain from farmers on an annual basis. And given that you're offering a much better price, the farmers cannot go to sell now to the market. They prefer to come to you. So the government clearly needs to open up. In terms of storage, I think even around Ahero, we also have the Lake Basin Development Authority, and we have some huge space there. So the government needs to take off this grain, because if they allow or leave it to farmers, then of course farmers will be running into huge losses. But then now it needs to be clear that you're going to do this for this year and next year, so that you prepare farmers to start now trying to be competitive, so that the farmers do not necessarily rack up their costs. They'll also be now knowing that, in 2022 or 2023, I'll be going to sell to the market, and I need to be competitive so that whatever market price I face, then I'm able to remain in production. Then now going to medium term and long term, the government, we know that especially in terms of storage can be an issue, especially where farmers, we're getting a lot of grain. Currently, Ahero production is a bit lower, but they still manage to get about 1.4 tons per acre, which is, for me, I think is reasonably okay. Mwea is much higher. They do around 2.5 to 3 tons per hectare. We have the warehouse receipting system. We need to actualize it so that farmers who worry about post-harvest storage and management can actually start benefiting from that. So one of the things that Mwea, you can do also is to lobby for the making sure that the act was already signed, the regulations is what is still pending. How can we fast track that process of the warehouse receipting system for it to start operations? For rice, we must also invest in irrigation. I think if we really want to enhance rice production, we can learn from other countries, especially Southeast Asia, who are more or less like us, that investment irrigation goes a long way to improving production. So this has to be done, in partnership with the county government and the national government. And just to emphasize the point that Francis was trying to make, we know that yes, we need not just invest in irrigation, but make sure that the irrigation is efficient. What Francis was trying to, the point Francis was trying to bring out is that although they pay an annual irrigation fee, they still have to incur other costs pumping water because water is not enough. So the infrastructure has to be made that it's efficient so that farmers get water when they need it and also they get it in sufficient volumes. And hopefully we'll be able to see us doing more than one cycle, probably I think like the Mwea Research Station has shown that you can do 2 or even 3 cycles in a year. And that would significantly increase our production. I think for trade, Mwea, you've mentioned it, that we need better policies for food trade, especially to deter the adulteration of rice. It's actually adulteration because you pass it off as something else, which is not. So can we look at the current laws and have even the Competition Authority, KEBS, and the Ministry of Agriculture working together to make sure that people declare if you're found to be adulterating rice, there is sufficient punishment that can create a deterrent. And this way, then people will be we have different product differentiation. If somebody wants cheap rice, they'll be buying Pakistani rice, knowing that it's actually Pakistani rice. You can try this, Eric, if you go to the supermarket, you'll only see Mwea rice and probably Thailand rice. And Thailand rice is mainly the jasmine rice. But then, given that you're importing 90%, surely that cannot be Mwea rice. So
I have a question for you, Doctor. I want to stop you here because this irrigation thing it bothers me a little bit, especially hearing what Francis had said, and he talked about a lack of water. Right? A lack of water in a country where what has happened over the last 9 months is that we've seen flooding of gigantic proportions, and that water just went to waste. Isn't it about time we started looking at innovations through which we can harvest this water that is causing such rampant destruction and actually use it for good? Because here we are and we're saying one of the production problems of rice is not enough water. But not too far away from this area, in places like Budalangi, for example, is where we saw some monstrous flooding, and that water goes to waste. This year, there will be flooding again. We know that. There will be flooding again this year. There will be flooding next year. There will be flooding the year after that. Just because of the geographical patterns that we are aware of. We know this is going to happen. Shouldn't we be looking the innovation way now to be able to have that water then diverted and used for production? Because we've talked about irrigation, it's an issue. Water, we talked about storage, it's an issue.
All there.
Water, it's there. Can that not be where the attention then is diverted and focused?
But can I just just jump in here? Mount Kenya, Mwea, there are no lakes there.
Yep.
We are in Lake Victoria. Ahero is flooded. There's natural water.
Can it not be dammed and used?
It is already there. It comes into the fields.
So how are we saying,
without us doing anything?
Into the floodplain.
Sure, but then how are we saying that there is a shortage when it comes to water that's needed?
The question is, what is Mwea doing right that we in Ahero over the last 50 years are doing wrong? Because Ahero has not been now. Ahero is nearly all my lifetime I've heard about rice from Ahero. What is Ahero doing wrong? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm concentrating Kisumu.
It's okay.
What are we doing wrong there? And I think Dr. Timothy needs to tell us what is happening in the Namthoy area, what we are doing wrong, which is at this moment, as I speak, when you go over the plains, it's flooded.
And why can't that water? I keep asking, why can't
it is
that water?
in the rice fields. The rice fields are flooded. because the rice fields are in those wetlands.
Sure, that's understandable.
So
but then
what
we
did
look
they-
at other parts where they're telling us
Yes.
that they don't have enough
Let's,
water.
so what is Mwea doing right? Let's
What lessons
concentrate
can
on
be
the
taken from each side?
concentrate on that positive. One
Yep.
little positive. What is Mwea doing right when they're getting water from the mountain, and how are they able to capture that? And how can we translate that across to them? And one question, Timothy, when you're talking about lobbying for the regulations of the act, please tell me which act you're talking about. So that is one thing that maybe we'll have a positive as a result of this. When I get back, I will try and follow up with the Agriculture Committee on that particular act. And that's one of the biggest problems we have. The act is done. The regulation and implementation by the executive is not done. So please tell us so that we can chase on that one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, Mheshimiwa, the regulations are the warehouse receipt systems.
Where else?
The warehouse receipt
Receipt
system. Receipt systems. So we need this regulation finalized so that the act can be implemented.
Please
I
explain
think
how
I do
that
agree.
works, Daktari.
So with the warehouse receipt system, when a farmer, for example, harvests a grain, so you'll be able to. So first of all, the warehouse will be the warehouse have to be certified. So that means that the act allows for private sector actors to be providing these services as well as the government. And the way it works is that I'm able to store my grain and pay a fee, which is usually like a commission, which will be determined. But then it also allows for you to ensure that grain is there, so that if the grain is spoiled, then the farmer is compensated when it's in storage. For certification, it means that the grains, it's not just a go down or a granary, it has to fit certain conditions. So for example, you must install moisture meters to make sure, because moisture is one of the key things that affect grain during storage. Of course, and then make sure that the storage will be, proofed from pests. Importantly, is that apart from insurance, the receipts will allow farmer to hold them. It becomes a commodity. Once that warehouse receipt systems, and then we have the commodity exchange coming into place. I know that the act is still being discussed, the Commodities Exchange Act.
Yes.
No, it's a bill now. It's still a bill, a commodity exchange bill. So once that is in place, then the farmer will be able to trade in these receipts the same way we trade in stocks. So you don't have to, move actual grain, but you exchange receipts, and the receipt bearer can actually redeem from any certified warehouse that particular grain. But then that kind of formalizing the grain market will be very useful to promote trade, and also for farmers. One of the other leverages is that it allows them to get cheap access of credit, because you can actually now show how much store you are holding. Right now, it's very expensive for farmers to get credit, because one, you don't have the information asymmetry between lenders and the lending. It's such that, for example, if it's formal loans, the banks or the microfinance, they don't know your ability to repay unless you have some non-farm work, and they can actually see that you've been maintaining an account and how much is passing through your account or something like that. But then for somebody who is just 100% doing farming, it's very difficult to demonstrate that. So it
requires the regulations. Have the regulations been drafted by the ministry? Have they been handed over to the National Assembly?
Yes, the regulations have been drafted.
I want to take this. You see, you brought up the Commodities Exchange Bill. And I saw it initially some time back, and it sort of faded away. There was also the futures, agricultural futures, that was linked into that. That is a positive that you have put, and I have taken that particular exercise to go and find out and come back to you, and even to you, Timothy, and see what we can do.
Thank you.
More important than that, when we're talking about short-term and long-term gains, etc., I want to point to you. You talked about agricultural mechanization. In certain countries like the UK, the USA, and etc., even diesel, there's agricultural diesel. They put a you make the pink color to it. when we tried that in Kenya, it was shot down. But the paraffin issue went across. So Timothy, are there other little things like this, what we call low-hanging fruit that we can work on, which will help you, the agricultural sector, especially rice, grain, to stabilize themselves, or to help the farmers?
Yeah, sure.
So what we'd like to hear is, what is a low-lying fruit that you might be able to identify and say to us, so that I can take it straight to the agriculture committee, because
one of them can even come from the finance committee. He talked about looking at the taxation.
That's right, yes.
Taxation.
Yeah.
So there's taxation that has been waived on equipment, but no taxation has been waived on spare parts.
You know
right,
that,
Timothy?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a fact. Yeah.
You know what happened there? I'll tell you, Timothy, because there was not enough lobbying from the agricultural side, and the lobbying came from the other side. They said, listen, if you allow tax exemption on spares for tractors, what is a tractor? Is that vehicle that pulls a trailer, also called a tractor in the American terms.
Yeah.
So they will start using that. And I said, no, this is semantics. English is not our level. Tractor, we mean agricultural tractor. We don't mean construction tractors. So I think these are the sort of things that earlier on we spoke about. The little gray areas where could have made a great difference, but somebody came and convinced us for other reasons to pass it the other way.
Yeah. And then I would also add that water storage, as City mentioned, is a necessary condition. We must store water. It doesn't make sense for us to be saying that we are doing irrigation and yet we are still tied to the cycle of when does the rain start, because we did not store it, so we have to wait for it to start raining so that we can start planting. We must store water. In Mwea, I know the dam is almost. We are hoping that probably by next year the dam will be finalized and operational. On the western part, we need a dam for that serves either Hero or West Kano or even both. I think that would be
asking a politician to look for a dam is suicide.
No. I think what we need to do is to see how can we push, or as part of oversight, look at what NIB is doing, and also task it to work with the county government of Kisumu to see whether they can actually construct a dam, because it does flood mitigation, but then also ensures that you have water for farmers when they need, and then you're no longer tied to the rainfall patterns. So you'll be able to plan for production throughout the year, regardless of whether it's raining or not. So that we must do. I think for taxes, it's important. Unfortunately, our tax structure has been a disincentive for the ag sector. Because apart from, I had forgotten to mention this, apart from the tax that is imposed on inputs, you remember last year there was a lot of tax on, VAT was imposed on agrochemicals. So for rice, use of fungicide is important for disease control. One of the key diseases that affects rice is the rice blast, which can actually, in the worst years we've had, we've ended up with losses of 80% of the crop being lost because of blast. And you need to use fungicides to control for this. So when you levy tax on the fungicide, and yet it's an important, it's a must use for a farmer. A farmer has no choice. Once your crop is affected, you must spray the fungicide. So when you're increasing the tax, you're not helping this farmer become competitive. So we must see how the government can work with the sector. Right. I do agree with Meshua that the agriculture ministry needs to improve and do much better when it comes to lobbying, especially with the National Treasury, because it's basically a competition. And you must lobby for farmers to get the right
through and through. And these are conversations that we must keep having, and that's why we have this Agri-Talk segment where we discuss matters of agriculture and food security. And for more on such kind of conversations, join Philip Keitani on KTN's Farmers TV every day between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. That's KTN's Farmer TV, and this is AgriTalk. Thank you very much, Timothy, for joining us. Dr. Timothy Njagi is a development economist and research fellow at Mwea Institute of Egerton University.
Thank you, Lati.
Asante sana, Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, CT Muga, Honorable Shakil Shabir, the MP for Kisumu East, and now joining us on the line is Honorable Dr. Kabinga Washira, the MP for Mwea constituency. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
I'm sure you heard the conversation that we're having about rice and rice growing, the plight of rice farmers, the market and all, from Dr. Timothy Njagi of Mwea Institute, and a number of things that he said that need to have happened by now, or that could still be done, especially by the Parliament and by the Executive. What do you have to say about that?
Now, let me first and foremost confess that I was on another assignment from Monday morning, so I've not been able to do the follow-up.
Right.
But I joined in when actually he was finishing.
Right.
So I don't know what are some of the areas that he highlighted, but it is true that we have a number of challenges in the rice industry. And this is historical. In a place like Mwea, rice farming started all the way from 1958. And when it started in 1958, it never started as a commercial venture. It really started as something to keep the then people who are in jail to be kept busy. So they are the ones who dug the trenches in Mwea, for example, and they are the people who are engaged in rice farming. So it was more of keeping them busy than a commercial venture. And this over time has evolved from what it was to what it is now and to what we want it to be. We in this country can be able actually to feed ourselves as far as rice is concerned. There are vast number of acres in Bura, in Ahero, in many other places. In Mwea, for example, we produce a lot of rice. So it's a question of concentration, and once we have the concentration from the government, and I'm seeing a lot of that coming in, we should be able. Right now, I think we are at 30%. In as far as meeting the demand for rice in this country is concerned. The effort by the government, including the Diva Dam, which is a 20 billion project that is going on once finished, we should see these rising to about 50%. And so, yes, we are seeing some improvement. There is a lot more to be done on the side of Parliament, and this is something that we are doing. We are caucusing as members of Parliament from rice-growing areas, so that we can start looking at the laws and what really needs to be done so that we can improve rice production as well as improve the incomes of farmers, because production is one thing, getting something to the farmers' pockets is another, and that has been a major problem. So there are some steps that we want to undertake. In Mwea, for example, we were being guided by a colonial rule, Cap 347, which was used to manage farming and farms in Mwea. That Cap 347, we did repeat it and replaced it with the Lies Irrigation Act 2018. So at least now we have one step forward as far as Parliament is concerned. The next step that we are doing is what I've just told you. We are caucusing and identifying one another. I've been reaching out to most of these MPs, and I believe the first thing that we do once we meet is now to have a meeting with an intention of really looking at the law that is now we've seen reforms in coffee, we've seen reforms in tea, and we want to do the same in as far as rice is concerned. Come up with a rice bill if we are able, and we have been talking to the government on this. A rice bill that will enable us to not only have rules that are going to help us in the management of rice farming, but also have a fund that can cushion farmers whenever there is a problem in as far as the market is concerned.
Mheshimiwa, thank you very much for raising our hopes in this regard. But let me ask the question. Everything that you've said sounds wonderful, but how long do you think it will take before the fruits of what you're hoping to see actually come into reality?
This is what I've just said, that before we went into recess and after the repealing of Cap 347, these things we couldn't do them simultaneously, although we couldn't do them at the same time. Remember, rice farms in a place like Mwea are still owned by the National Irrigation Board. Farmers do not have even a document that they can go into a formal financial sector to get money. They are still borrowing from Shyrox, if you like. And these are some of the things that are really, really disturbing us in that industry. And this is why I've said that we have, for me, I have a four-prong approach to the whole thing. First was to repeal that Cap 347. Second one is try to push for the rice bill. Third is to try and implement what we passed in Parliament, what we call warehousing receipt. I hope you are familiar with it. Warehousing receipt.
Yep.
It's what we enable the farmers now. Once they harvest, because another challenge they have is most of the farmers, when they harvest, if they get their 50 bags or 20 bags, they have no storage in their homes. So they end up selling to brokers at throwaway prices. With warehousing receipt, now they'll be able to now take their merchandise to those warehouses, get a receipt formal, they can go to a bank, get some money, small money, awaiting prices to improve or awaiting for their merchandise to sell. That will be a major, 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 major achievement.
That also, we discussed it actually, Mheshimiwa, and
Yes.
what we understand what is missing to operationalize this law is the regulations. Regulations also go through Parliament. How far are they, as far as you know?
That is a very, very good. In fact, that is an area where we know we are doing not so well. Regulations, like even for the irrigation bill 2018, they are yet to be brought to Parliament. You know, regulations are normally initiated by the ministry. So the ministry would do the regulations. Once they do the regulations, they would come to the House Committee on
Delegated legislation.
Delegated legislation. They would discuss it before they bring it to the House. Some of us are able to intervene even before they are finished with it by the delegation.
Actually, Dr. Njagi told us that he knows that the ministry has already published those regulations, so they are in Parliament.
I can tell you, if they came to Parliament, they came just before we were leaving. That one I can assure you. I'm one person who is very keen on that.
Okay.
I chase on these things every minute. So if they did, then it was the last few days of our going to recess. And it is good if they are there. I hope they have also brought the warehousing receipt regulations, because we are really looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah.
Those two things are part of my plan. The final one is on research. In many of the places where we are growing rice, the research is still wanting, and much of the seeds that we are using are probably being carried over all the way from the time we started rice farming. In Mwea, for example, we are touted to be having the best rice probably in Africa. But is that best rice in Africa interpreting into money into people's pockets? This is what we are now, that is going to be our final step in research. We have a facility which we call Mwea Irrigation and Agricultural Development Facility called MEAD, where they occupy about 300 acres in Mwea. We want them to start showing us, what they are doing and, getting value out of it as my fourth step. So there are those four steps which I believe, and I think there's after a lot of research from my own, to look at the problems that are really killing this industry. Take, for example, when the government came in and gave 600 million to support the rice industry. This was supposed to have a revolving fund that will enable KNTC, Kenya National Trading Corporation, to buy rice from farmers in both Kano Plains and Mwea and sell to government institutions. Because of the high quality of our rice, this money came, but very little of it was actually spent in Mwea because of the high prices. They go to prisons, for example, they give the prices that Mwea rice is costing. They say, no, That is very high compared to what we've been doing. Some of them have been buying from Pakistan, imported rice. So when they compare that price, they find it ours is high. Much of this money actually went to Ahero because in Ahero they have this Chindano rice. So much of it went there. But unfortunately, I'm told that even Ahero could not meet the demand. And therefore, there is a possibility.
But when I hear this, Mheshimiwa, I also see a hand. Okay, there are a couple of things. One, there could be justification on the cost of production locally being high, so therefore the cost of rice is high. But when the government releases money to support local farmers so that we can buy their rice, how can somebody, a government institution, say that this rice is too expensive, I'm going to buy from Pakistan? I mean, what the hell are you saying?
That's what I wanted to explain to you. They ended up in buying much of the rice from Kano Prince because Kano Prince rice was cheap. And then out of it, some people found a way out of it. They would import rice or bring rice all the way from Taita Taveta in Tanzania, I'm told. I have no confirmation of this, but I'm told. So they take it to their Ahero areas. They sell it as if it's being grown there.
Ahero rice.
And and this is why I'm telling you that much of the money did not find itself into Mwea.
So it went to merchants and corruption.
I would say so. I would say so without any hesitation on that. So this is why we are saying that the government did its part. The operationalization mechanism is the one that now corrupted the whole thing.
Okay. Now, your role here as the MP for Mwea, including Shakil Shabir, who's the MP as well, would be to provide the checks and balances and oversight such operationalization.
Yes.
Now, what role have you played, for example, to ensure that the money that was released by the government actually went to the benefit of the farmers?
My brother, if you went to KNTC today and they tell you the number of times I've visited there, you know we have really tried. For us to have discovered what was really happening, that information cannot find you on the desk.
True.
You would have to go for it. That means you'd have to go to KNTC. I would have to go to my societies in Mwea, try to look at what is the amount of rice that's being bought by the government, then go to KNTC, try to understand why, and then make an inference.
This is part of your job, isn't it?
So I like it. Yeah. I am not complaining.
Is it then raised on the floor of Parliament, where it's on record, that this issue has become an issue that Parliament is then investigating what happened to the 600 million shillings?
And then to stop it from happening again.
If you go to the Ministry of Agriculture now, and I'm telling you things that I do, that's why I didn't have to prepare for you. I have all this information within myself. Go to Ministry of Agriculture right now, and you'll find my question, which was unfortunately closed as we were leaving.
Right.
That is already there. If you also go to the Trade Ministry, you will also find a question that I asked. So, in fact, what you are saying, we have played our role as registrators.
Is there a committee in Parliament that deals with agricultural issues, Mheshimiwa?
Yes.
And what was their stand on this particular issue?
In fact, they are very supportive. If you call the chair, Mr. Telero, talk of rice, and he'll tell you that he have an outstanding issue on rice that he is sorting out.
Essentially, nothing has been done. That's what exactly everything you're telling us amounts to. Nothing has been done, and there are big plans that are being put in place.
Not unless you want to conclude. Not unless you want to conclude that, my brother. Because if I tell you that we have asked the minister to come to Parliament to explain how the 600 million was spent, is that not a law that we pray as members?
Has he come, and then after these deliberations, has then a next step been taken in terms of what then will be done about the issue?
I've just said that this happened, or rather the discovery was made just before we closed for December holidays. And I personally also had an appointment with the minister.
Right.
We sat with the minister. I'm supposed to go back there next week. We sit on the same. That's what we are supposed to do. Remember, the minister also has to get the right information from his ministry.
That's true.
And this is why I'm saying this is an issue. Nobody can say that we are doing nothing. I personally, having initiated 2 questions in Parliament and also sought a statement. So there are 2 questions and 1 statement in Parliament. Having met the minister himself and with another appointment next week, my brother, my sister, I don't think you can say we are doing nothing on this.
Mheshimiwa, until the lives of the rice farmers in your constituency change,
yes,
what then can we say our efforts have amounted to really?
Our effort, life cannot change instantly, my brother. The government released money. We carried out our investigations. We did the right thing in Parliament. I'm doing the right thing with the minister. You do not expect them to benefit until all these efforts are complete.
Actually, actually, we do. We actually do expect, because I mean, these are issues that probably have existed even prior to your being a member of Parliament for this particular region.
Yes, they did, but every leader has different approaches.
Yes.
As I told you, on being elected in 2017, the first thing I did was to initiate the repealing of Cap 347. That was a beginning. This is a nut that existed since 1958. I wasn't there, but every person has an effort. I'll give you an example. In Mwea, for example, we had an MP who did very well, called Alfred Derito. He was able to fight for the release of farmers from NIB during that time, when they were also almost doing it as a slavery kind of farming, where you would take every merchandise to NIB and NIB will give you a ration even for your own family. He did his part. I came in 20 years later to now approach it from the legal side.
Yeah.
I am doing mine on the legal side. He did his, I would say, if you may, on the physical side, where they had demonstrations and those kind of things, and it worked for what they wanted. But after achieving that, now we need to anchor these into law. And that is what we are now fighting for. That's why we are caucusing as members of Parliament, so that we can sit with Skinner Sabil and others and come up with the laws that we know are now wrong-term. Yeah? That way, after we put all that in place, now we can sit and say how much. Remember, like me, when in 2017, I would say a kilo of paddy rice used to cost 40 shillings. Or rather, they were selling at 40 shillings. Today, the minimum you can sell in Mwea is 65. So we can't say we are where we started from the term of this Parliament.
With the same cost
we
of
are
production?
not yet there. Yeah?
Has the cost of production remained the same, or has it reduced?
In fact, what I introduced was a technical team comprising of the Ministry of Agriculture, NIB, and other stakeholders. Every year, every season, we sit to look at the cost of production so as to determine the minimum amount that a kilo should cost.
Right.
That was another major achievement, because there was no basis on which you tag your price. You would wake up and say, okay, rice is 40 shillings or 45. But now we know the cost of production. Like, for example, this season, the cost of production was about 45 shillings. Anything selling around there is a loss to the farmer.
A loss to the farmer, indeed.
That's why we came up with a figure.
Mheshimiwa, your colleague Shakir Shabir also has some comments to make on this.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa, let's do this. You and myself, as a direct result of this particular conversation, we find each other in the next day or so, and then we put together our heads to make sure that the warehousing systems bill and the one to do with the commodities exchange bill and one or two other things are actually pushed through. In fact, let that caucus start today. In fact, then I'll look for you and you look for me. So that
I'll finish the write-up for the caucus.
Yes.
I was going to tell you I've finished the write-up for the caucus. I've been liaising with Honorable Odege from your side, So Honorable Dege should be in the know. And I've been actually telling him to look for these people who are coming from these rice growing areas, because me, I've finished my part.
No, what we will
I've
do,
done the write-up.
what we'll do, Mr. Mwea, let you and me meet, and anybody else, let's take that little action, whatever we can do, and with everybody else.
Start from somewhere. Also, the investigation into how
the
600 million happened, push through this investigation, because you see, it's very clear that even by the time the president was issuing this instruction, there were people who had looked at it, and there were people who had decided how they were going to eat the money. In the end,
I sit on the Special Funds Accounts Committee. I sit on the Special Funds Accounts Committee.
I'm not saying that you are part of it. I'm just saying it's...
No. What I'm saying is, since I've gone to KMTC and I've found lice, the stores are full. Go there now. You'll find the stores are full.
Yeah.
So I do assume and believe that lice was bought, because the stores are full. I visited them 3 times.
Yes, but Mweshimua, you have also told us that you've also
I've
found
told
out
you the stores. Now the next one,
anecdotally that there's a likelihood that not all the money went to the direct Kenyan farmer.
Sure.
And these questions need to be asked and answered. And so that you can make sure that going forward, that you put in the checks and balances. Thank you very much for joining us and for at least sharing all the insights that you have with us this morning.
Yes.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much. I will look for my brother Shabil there.
Yes.
I believe he has my number. As I said, I am complete with my write-up on the caucus purpose and the objectives and why we need it. It's ready to go to the speaker. What I need is the list of members who are willing now to join in, and we move on that.
Very good. And when you need public caucus, Spice FM, the Situation Room is here and it's ready.
Oh, very good. You want to be a member of the same?
Yes, on the public front, when it comes to public awareness and public initiative, we're right here. Dr. Kabinga
It's something I believe in.
Yes.
It's something I believe in and something I know will help the farmers quite a lot.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad that you have also brought it up, and I want to really thank you. Probably this is the first initiative I'm getting from a studio where I'm being called without even being informed or notified. But I tell you, this initiative will probably, even the speaker is also listening himself, and that will be very good for us. When we finally take our appeal to him, we now have a reference. We will see how we even met with Shabir while he was in the studio and I was in my office.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you too. Okay. You too. And your colleague there. And my colleague, Sheikh Shabil. Also,
Asante. Have a good day. Dr. Kabinga Wachira is the MP for Mwea constituency, talking about the rice issue.